little conversation about looking down there, or the taco box. Somebody called it today. That's a new one for me. Did a little post today on why it's important to look and kind of understand your anatomy before having kids, because lots of times if things are different afterwards, there's a lot of judgment that can go on, and we don't really have a good reference point. And it's like, especially if something happened with a birth injury, you know, there's a lot of emotions involved in looking. And then I had a great conversation today with Kimberly Johnson. She goes by Wild Matrescence on Instagram. She's been on the show before. She's experienced a birth injury herself, was a professional road biker, and also just finished a PhD in psychology. And now she works on mental health with pregnant and postpartum women and that sort of thing. And we talked about it, and she's going to be our season finale episode for the Active Mom Postpartum podcast. I think that one's going to drop right before Thanksgiving. And the whole idea about kind of looking at our own anatomy, it's a very different process for all of us. Some of us can look and have it be very objective. Some of us can look and it can be quite emotional. And we talked a lot about just, you know, anatomical prolapse versus symptoms and things like that, and quality of life. And again, how understanding our bodies is just this so big holistic thing. And one of the things that I always try and do when I'm working with a patient is provide some degree of consent, because I understand that looking isn't just black or white. It's not just gathering information. It can have a lot of baggage, so to speak, that goes along with it. I'm like, hey, you know, do you think looking will make things easier for you to understand, or do you think it's actually going to make it traumatic, as opposed to being like, hey, look, and then we deal with the trauma later. But I'm really curious, like, you know, when we're talking about how to, I don't know, give better information earlier, before we're navigating birth injuries and things like that. When is a good time to start, one, having those conversations with your kids about looking, and two, like, how does that process sort of evolve as you become a teenager and a young adult, and, you know, incorporating your life experiences with that, navigating sexuality. Like it's a very nuanced conversation. And we haven't even gotten to the birth injury kind of part of that. But I would really love to kind of understand women who are either, you know, childbearing age, let's call it that you're thinking about having kids, or you're currently pregnant, or you're in postpartum. Like, what was that information that was given to you down there that set up your expectations for kind of what's going on now? Was it like, you know, 6th grade health class in the cross section? You know, were there influences as far as, you know, how you were raised, family culture, religion, kind of that sort of thing? Like, when we look in the rear view, what influenced what we think and believe about even looking at our vagina, at our vulva, that sort of thing. Like, now it's kind of in funny ways. Like, you know, a friend of mine, Sarah Rear, and she dresses up in the vagina puppet, you know, like it's on book covers and stuff like that now. Like, but it's still not exactly it. It's characterizations, or like you know what I'm talking about. It's almost like cartoony. And I'm like, okay, great. We've got different versions of it. It's in art, you know, everything's being represented, but like, does that impact it as well? That we look down, and because we don't see a cartoon, we're like, oh, okay, that's kind of gross and nasty. Like, I do think so much of that plays into kind of how we perceive our birth injuries, and kind of what we expect to see, and what we do actually see. And again, it's just a piece of that whole puzzle in navigating, especially pelvic organ prolapse. So not so much leakage or other issues, I don't think. But yeah, share with me in the comments, kind of, or even DMs if you're more comfortable there, kind of like, what was your intro to looking down there? And, you know, do you feel like it influenced how you navigate any issues that you're having pelvic floor wise now? Or again, if you're choosing to do it differently, then have of your experience, and you're introducing that with your kids, like what's your process and kind of what's informing that? Because again, I think we're going to do it a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of considerations for it. But knowledge, power, advocacy, empowerment, all that good stuff. So let me know, right? Right, Abby? Yeah.